Hi, I'm Georgia Marcantoni. I'm so excited to be teaming up with the Lightning Society today. Okay, cool. Hey, Nicola, I saw that your message. So happy to be with you guys and to talk about my favorite topic, creating home as sanctuary. We're going to give it just a little bit of time for people to jump on, so get yourself comfy, get ready to learn a little something, maybe. So my name is Georgia Marcantoni, in case you missed that. I have a holistic wellness company called Homecoming, and I focus with people on really coming home to themselves. And we do that in a lot of different ways through evolutionary astrology, Kundalini yoga, conscious living practices, and also creating our home sanctuaries. So I'm a coach and a designer and an astrologer sort of wrapped up into one. So I think you'll be getting a little bit of a different perspective of healing and what that kind of looks like from a little bit different point of view. So just to give you a little bit more background about how I came into this while we're waiting for everyone. So as I mentioned, I started out more in the design side of things. I went to FIT and became a prop stylist and set designer and a home product developer, and really kind of started exploring what home means through that lens, and then traveling around the world and trying to find what it meant for me personally after college. And then when I was 25, I got really sick with autoimmune disorders, and I was completely bedridden. I was extremely in a lot of pain. I wasn't really able to move very much, and as the inflammation grew in my body and I was covered head to toe in eczema, I started really learning more about a holistic lens of healing, because the Western perspective had kind of really run its course for me and it wasn't able to help me at that time. And so I started really learning about all of the layers that had come into my own illness that had helped me create my body in this state. And I realized through all of my re-education that there was a lot of toxicity in my environment. So the environment of my mind, the environment of my relationships, and the environment of my home. Even through being a home goods product developer and training in that, I really didn't realize the toxicity that was in our home goods and the way that our houses and buildings are constructed. And that level of toxicity has an effect on us, even if it's subtle and it takes some time before we realize it. There are those of us like myself who are extra sensitive, and we're sort of the canary in the coal mine that you can learn from, because we get sick first. We get the effect faster. And even if you're not necessarily feeling it, it doesn't mean the exposure isn't happening. It's just taking a little bit more of a delay before you get a response, which is kind of what's tricky with the toxicity stuff, because there is this delay. And by no means am I happy about this virus pandemic, but I do think what's helpful in that situation is that we're all kind of getting a new education on how these subtle, non-physical things in our world that we can't see and we can't feel and we can't touch are having really major effects on our physical health and our body. And I think that is going to help people understand how much of our world is outside of our view. And this kind of area of toxicity and also sort of the subtle ways in which we create home are very much a part of that conversation. So today we're going to talk about cycles, and we're going to talk about astrology and the stars and how the cycles of what's happening in our galaxy affect what happens here in our home lives, and how we can look at our birth charts to get an understanding of what home means for us. So we'll talk about it a little bit from there, and we'll also go into building rhythm and building a sanctuary. It's not just the physical creation of it, it's the activation of it. And so each one of us really gets the opportunity to activate our space, because you can have a meditation room, but if you don't go sit down, it kind of doesn't matter, does it? So we have to get that make space for that in our mind, right? And we have to make space for that in our day, and then we have to make space for that in our space, so that we can welcome those practices every day into our lives. So we'll get into some of the rhythmic nature of creating a sanctuary. And then we'll also get into the actual design part of it towards the end, because the design comes last. And I'll also just, unveil my process when I work with people, when I do this for myself. How can our homes really be a support system in our own health and wellness? How can we use them that way? And so I'll teach you what that is. So we're going to kind of go through the whole process, but we'll get a nice summary at the end, and just give you some good tips on how to do it DIY. And also just to let you know, I am live streaming from my phone because my internet has been funny today, so I can't read that far to all of the messages, and so I'll try and take some breaks throughout chatting and go and look at questions and answers. And I'd love to leave the last part of the session open for your own questions. Every home is different, and we all have really specific things that we need to do for each space. So if you have some questions that are on your heart that you want to ask, I'll definitely try and save the end, maybe the last 5 or 10 minutes, so that we can really talk about your home space, your challenges, what you need right now, and how I can help you, hopefully. Okay, so let's see, where are we at with time? All right, I think we're far enough in. Let's go ahead and get into it. Sorry, I have my notes in front of me. Okay, so let's jump off by really discussing what is a home. What does that mean? And why in the world does it matter? So from my perspective, home is a very spiritual thing. Yes, we have a physical little house that we live in, but that's not what a home is, and that's not actually what we're talking about. So from an astrological point of view, we come from the land of Pisces, which is the beginning and the end. It's the infinity, it's wholeness, it's unity consciousness. It's when we are complete and we are one. And we go through the birth canal, and we go through that portal, and we enter into the land of Aries, where we separate from unity. And in that separation, we create a contrast, and we individuate the self into an ego so that it can fulfill the desires of the soul and the evolution of that soul. And your ego is there to serve that evolution. And as you go through the astrological wheel of those 12 houses, you are in the process of becoming. You are learning who you are. Aries' key word is I am. I am trying to discover who I am in this lifetime. And when we go through that portal, we go through that birth canal process, we forget. We forget who we are. We close down the perspective. We make it really narrow. And then moving through the wheel, we're opening it back up. We're dissolving our boundaries and barriers and limitations, and we're remembering who we are and where we came from. This is the process of homecoming. So as we are in this state of remembrance, we get the opportunity to cultivate the self. And so our home space is essentially an authentic reflection in space of our non-physical selves, of our values, our ethics, our morals, what we care about, and we embody that in time and space in our homes, and it mirrors back to us who we really are. So we want to ask, like, have I invested in my home? Have I invested in this area of my life, in this space where I ask, what do I value and what do I need and what nurtures me? You know, these are very feminine energied questions, something that most of us were never really taught to ask. We don't say, like, well, what nurtures me? You know, maybe if you've gone into your own self-healing and self-discovery process, you started asking those questions. But typically speaking, most of us have not really asked, what really serves me? What do I need to feel safe, secure, nurtured, restored, regenerated at a daily level? And so our home becomes our sanctuary because it's like our ultimate retreat center. We can't go to retreat every day, we can't go to the spa every day, but we can come home every day. And so we can use our home space as that room for nurturance and sanctuary and retreat and reflection and touching back in with our soul. So that's sort of the point of our home. And as we move through that process, we really get to build a lot of intimacy with ourselves, because it is this discovery process. And in doing so, not only do we get to realize what these things are, but we also get to bring in our creativity so that we can answer that call to support what we find those answers to be, right? So we can move from idea into reality through the creation process. And our home is a place where we have complete permission to do whatever we want, especially if we live alone, right? So you're really building a completely new perspective of what space is for you and your relationship to that space, your relationship to that part inside of yourself and your heart and your womb, where you can go into and really touch in and find that safety and nurturance. So the first part of the design process actually begins in building rhythm. So the question is, how do I find my beat? You know? So the reason that we start with rhythm is because this is the beginning part of that relationship process with self. Understanding how I move in time and space allows me to unlock a moving meditation of my life, my ideas, my thoughts, my values, my concerns embodied through the self and physically moving through the self in space to create and to act from a place of knowing of what those values, concerns, and needs are. So life can really move into an extremely ritualistic process and become this moving meditation experience. And it starts at home in developing that and asking what that is and finding what's yours, and not necessarily what society's is or what you were told to do, but is truly yours. How do we really act here? What do we really do behind closed doors, you know? So we can touch into our heart as we begin this question, because our heart is this percussion system that creates the rhythm of our lives, of our breathing, of our impulses. And our heart is an electrical force, right? It's connected to our nervous system. And this aspect of ourself is connected to our endocrine system, so our moods, how we feel, and our circadian system, which is connected to light, and that helps us wake up, it helps us go to sleep. And what's really cool is that plants and animals and fungi and bacteria and every other sentient living being in this world also has a circadian system. So we are in connection together, we are united together, we are literally on one rhythm together with the sun. And that sun is feeding us and we are receiving it, and it's cueing the body to turn on and to turn off. And if we were to explore into the field of epigenetics, then we would also see how we can turn on and turn off our system through our environment. So the environment is a super key tool that they're really only beginning to understand in science exactly how it works in relationship to our own growth process. But we are not just products of our environment, but we literally evolve with the environment. So what you put into the environment matters, and it literally creates a different version of you based on what you put into it or take out of it, right? So we're going to play with all of these systems, and particularly with the circadian system in our home. You can do circadian lighting, but you can also wake up your space and you can put your space to bed. So as you start your day and you start bringing in this rhythm into your day, you can open all of your blinds and curtains and drapes, and you can start bringing that light into your house at the beginning of the day to wake yourself up. The light is a huge part of how you're going to wake up, because it's going to activate that part in your system, your body, yeah? So then, maybe the rhythm goes into, saying hello to all of your plants, because maybe while you're opening all of those blinds, there's plants next to those areas, and you can bring them water and bring them light and connect with them, say hello, and begin your day harmonizing with your space and waking it all up together as you awaken. And we can really use our body as our teacher here as a feedback system as well. And so there's a lot of rituals that we can bring into our day as we realize what our rhythm is, and also living in a more detox lifestyle state. So starting the day with a tablespoon of psyllium husk and 12 ounces of water, you mix it up really fast, you down it as the first thing that goes into your body, and you start with a fat-soluble fiber. And so you begin excreting through the body, helping things that are from yesterday leave the body. You can then go into some hot lemon water and flush the liver. The fat-soluble fiber is also for the liver, but that's going to give it an extra oomph to leave. And then maybe with that hot lemon water, you go and you meditate, you connect with the self, maybe you exercise, maybe you read, but something to really connect in with the self and to ground and unite. And then once you go through that practice, having a really healthy breakfast. Food is such an amazing way that we have created this planet so that we get to connect with nature, connect with ourselves at a rhythmic level. Food can actually be such a ritual process. It can be a really sacred, pleasurable experience, because if you think about it, like, you can actually it can actually get so profound and beautiful. We're taking the elements of the earth, all of the bits of nature, the plants, the animals, the sunlight, the energy, the minerals, and we take them into our body through eating, and we literally merge. Our body knows what to do with that. We merge and we process that plant or energy source, and it assimilates into the body, and now two things have become one thing, and they have sacrificed their earthly energy into your being, and you can assimilate that and use their energy to then go out and do something with it. You know, we're exchanging energy through this world, and you know, it's very important to think about when we receive that energy, what do we do with that energy? How do we give that? How do we have gratitude for the earth and the sacrifice of her for our lives? And how can we share? And you know, rhythmically every day, 3 to 5 times a day, you get to tune into that gratitude group, tune into that magical experience of what's really happening when we eat. So that's an amazing way to build rhythm. And then, you know, if you're a woman, when we get to that 3 o'clock point in the day, it's really important to have a midday meditation break as well. So if you're female identifying, I highly suggest that you bring in a nice, maybe 11-minute meditation practice at 3. A lot of people kind of crash at that time, so it's a nice way to kind of just come back into yourself, get some focus, get some creativity in your day, reconnect with self. And then, you know, as we go into mealtime at nighttime, maybe we're doing that with somebody we love. We're connecting at another level as we connect with our food elements. And then towards the end of the evening, as the light starts going down, we can start turning down the blinds, start turning everything down, switching from overhead lighting and moving into mood lighting, table lamps and floor lamps and candles, and really starting to tone things down, getting ready, preparing ourselves, and cueing the body that is happening, that we're getting closer to sleeping time, because electricity disrupts the circadian rhythm because it gives you a false belief that it's still sunny outside. Your body interprets it that way. So as we tone the light down, especially overhead light, we can help cue the circadian rhythm to say, okay, it's getting into night phases, and I need to send those hormones out into the body, and I need to start preparing for that. So then, you know, as we get towards the very end of our night, maybe we have some golden milk, or we have a cup of tea, or we do something again to connect back into our heart, connect back into slowness and subtlety and softness, and begin to prepare for bed. And before we go to bed, we can completely close all of the drapes and blinds and curtains and really shut everything down and off, and turn off our routers, turn off our phone, put it on airplane mode. And all of these things will minimize the radiation that comes, the EMFs that come, and they disrupt our own electromagnetic field. We'll talk a little bit more about that in toxicity, but remembering that our heart is an electromagnetic source of energy, and it has its own field that it creates, and our electronics also have their own EMFs, electromagnetic field, and so when they interact with each other, there are disruptions that happen in our body. So we really do need to protect our system as we are adding technology into our lives, so that we can really minimize the disruption, because that's a huge part of our health and our healing that is sort of in these subtle realms that we don't even think about or realize are actually having a big effect on our health and well-being. So, you know, really moving through our day in a sense of rhythmic contemplation and understanding, and using it that way, and really exploring, how do I move through my space? What do I do? How do I move from the front door to my bedroom or to the kitchen? How do I cook? You start finding your dance in space, in life. It becomes this beautiful embodiment of the soul in physical reality. So that's kind of what we explore at the beginning part, and we start deconstructing and understanding that and realizing, what's really ours and what's not. And even if it is ours, do we want to keep it? Or is it something that drives us crazy? Like, here's a really basic example, but I am so bad with losing my keys. Like, that's something so many of us do. It's like all of the important stuff, somehow, like, I misplace all of that. And so instead of fighting against myself, it was like, okay, this is my rhythm. This is what I do. I have to own this. I have to be real about it. I can't pretend it's not happening. It is happening. I'm wasting so much time looking for my keys, right? So in honoring my truth, I found a solution. I created a system. So systems are the second half of rhythm. So, okay, this is what I do. And now how can I create systems to support me into repatterning, moving in a different way? Or how can I support myself to do more of that and bring more energy into it? So in this situation, obviously I wanted to repattern. This is not something I wanted to keep up in my life or defend, right? It was like, let's change it. So I found this absolutely beautiful hook that I loved, and I hung that on my wall right next to my front door, and I got a huge hoop for my keychain so that when I'm fishing through my bag, I can feel the hoop really easily and discern that it's there. And when I walk into my front door, now I take that key and I put the hoop on the hook. It looks beautiful when I'm not standing there, and very clear that it's there. I see it, so I know. And then voila, like, no problem anymore. I created a system that eradicated this really annoying pattern that I had that I didn't want to keep, and it cost me less than $20. It took me 3 minutes to install, and there you go, problem solved. Hours of my life came back into my day, and transformation happens. I can move on to bigger and better problems now, yeah? So, we can create all sorts of systems for ourselves. We can also, just move our furniture around in the space differently. Maybe you're always sort of running into something and you realize like you're out of sync with that in your space. So we can, figure out a better composition and layout for the space that is in honorance of your rhythm and the size of your furniture in context to your space, and create a different kind of pattern and system for you to flow in a little bit better. And for women, we get an extra layer of adding that rhythm into our moon cycles, our menstrual cycle, so that each week as our hormonal balance changes and we have different needs, we can also implement different areas of the space for those needs and to support that cycle and that pattern. And that's another layer of you getting to know yourself and your body and your needs and your moods and how they change, and being able to be flexible throughout the month as those changes occur and continuously support your best self to come forward. Because ultimately that's the point of the systems, is to really help your best self come forward. So going now into a little bit, let's see if there are just any questions there. Yes, thank you so much. Great to see you, Jessica and Stacy and Christina. So nice to see all of you. Hi. So you can really invite yourself forward through your systems. And then if we come into the toxicity sector of our segment, so like I mentioned, when I was really sick, I started learning about all of the different toxicities in our environment and how they had contributed to my illness. I had like no idea, and at first it honestly made me extra concerned. I think, obviously this is a heightened moment where we're aware of these non-physical contaminants in our environment that are affecting our health. So I don't want to say any of this to heighten your anxiety or your concern. There are things you can do about it. And, that's why it's powerful to have the information, because then you can support yourself and you can also support your mind in not being so shocked that any of these things are happening, and instead just put the support in that's needed to balance it out and mitigate the issue. So with toxicity, so going back to my story, at first it was like I just kind of felt like I needed to almost be in a bubble. Like I was like, the only way I'm going to be safe is, if I'm in a bubble, because if my mind is toxic in my thoughts and my relationships are toxic and then my products are toxic, and my food is toxic, it just felt like every single thing was contributing to my illness, and I felt really kind of paralyzed by that. And it switched at one point where it stopped being paralyzing, and luckily with my study in astrology, we talk a lot about polarity. So polarity is really about integration, because you have these two sides of the coin, these opposite poles, and it's not about leaving one for the other. It's about integrating them into a whole and realizing that this is that is this. And so we can flip things. And so if every single thing in my life is harming me and contributing to my illness, then how can I flip that into the other polarity so that every single thing is supporting me? Every single thing is supporting my wellness and my safety. And so that's really the point in deconstructing the toxicity in our environments at every level. The toxicity of our mind, the toxicity in our emotions and our relationships, the toxicity in our environment. We work at all levels so that we can clear everything. And even the toxicity that's sitting in my energy body, sitting in these non-physical sides of myself. So that's kind of where the Kundalini can come in, and we can really process and we can transform energy, and we can work through those shadows, and we can transmute them into something that's healthy and healing and whole. So when we're looking at toxicity at a more environmental level, which is what I'll kind of focus on here, because we could talk about toxicity for days because there's so much. But I really want you to think about some really sort of fundamental and basic pieces of it. So air quality is major, our water quality is major, and our materials. The materials that our products are made with are super key as well. So I'm going to mostly focus on materiality for today. As far as water is concerned and air is concerned, I highly suggest purification systems for that. You really want to make sure you're drinking pure water and breathing pure air, and especially in your home space, what most people don't realize, which I think there needs to be like a huge public service announcement on this one, but indoor air quality, and this is an old statistic, like they haven't even done the research and provided new statistics in like 15 years, so it could be worse today. I don't really know. I would assume it's worse. But as of 15 years ago, indoor air quality was 5 times more toxic than outdoor air quality, even in the most toxic urban cities like New York or Shanghai. So why is that true? How is that true? Well, because we have, when we buy products that are made from chemicals, they have this thing called VOCs that they off-gas. And the VOCs are toxic. And, so even though you can't see it, these materials are breathing, they are excreting these chemicals into our air space, and we're inhaling them, and of course that is bringing in our toxic exposures. Also, if it's upholstery, and we're laying down on it, our skin also digests, so it pulls in that toxicity through the body. So when it comes to the most important room in your house to make sure that it's totally toxic free, like if you were going to just focus on one room, the most important room for you to really invest your money and your attention on is your bedroom. So the reason that we work on the bedroom is that at least in that one space, you usually have the most control here, first of all, too. So if you have a partner or you have kids or roommates, maybe it's harder to do things out in common spaces, but in our bedroom, we usually have a little bit more control there. We can bring in an air purifier, a mattress that is organic and natural. We sleep 30% of our lives, and so we're inhaling and we're pulling in that toxicity through our body, especially if, usually more of our skin is exposed when we're asleep. Maybe we even sleep naked. So, we're ingesting all of that through all of our breathing in our skin. And so giving that break to happen during that 8 or 9 hour window every day when you're in your bedroom, so is a huge minimization of the toxic burden on your body. So we want to minimize every burden that we can so that we aren't creating problems that don't need to be there, essentially. So, and that in itself will give you a huge uplift, and you'll feel better just by removing this stuff. You don't have to even change anything about anything else that you're doing in your life, and you will feel better. So in your bedroom, we want to have that organic, natural mattress. We want to have an air purifier, and we want to have bedding that is of natural materials and ideally organic as well. And at very least, there is another certification, I might be saying this wrong, but it's like OETKO, it's I believe OETKO, and that's for off-gassing. So even like they'll test it, so even if it is not an organic natural fiber, they'll see how much it's actually off-gassing, and if you can keep that minimal, that's helpful. And I've noticed that certification, especially on some more affordable products, so keep your eye out for that one. And if you have foam in that mattress, make sure it's sort of pure, at least at that grade. That's another certification that you'll kind of see out there. But so we want our natural bedding, mattress, and air purifier, also putting in blackout curtains because we don't want to disrupt our sleeping through the light patterns. So all of those things are going to get you a much deeper level of sleeping, and it's going to allow the body to really detox. That's part of what we're doing when we sleep. So you're really setting yourself up for success when you sleep by removing all of those unnecessary burdens. And so, yes, thank you, Christina. That's how you say it. Check that out in the chat for the right way with the certification for the off-gassing of textiles. So yeah. And we want to try and go to bed by 10 p.m. It's really challenging, especially in the city, but we do want to go to bed by 10 p.m. because it keeps us in the rhythm with the circadian cycles. And then when 1 o'clock rolls around and it's liver detox time for our body, we're deep enough in our rest that our liver can really be detoxed. So you can really set yourself up if you go to bed just a bit earlier so that you have that deep rest by 1 p.m. And I also just want to like share one quick story about lead and water, because I was super surprised by this. I'm like in the process of figuring out what to do with it. So if anyone has any environmental lawyers they can connect me with, or advice on this process, I would love thoughts here, because so I moved to Denver about 6 months ago, and the water didn't taste good when I got here, and I was kind of freaked out by that, but I just kind of kept going with it. I like left all of my stuff in New York when I moved, my water purifier, my air purifier, everything. So it's taken me time to recultivate items in my house. And but God, I really hated not having that water purifier. So anyway, time goes on, and I start, and I get sick. I was like in the best condition of my life before I moved here, and then I start getting sick since I get here. I am the canary in the coal mine. I get the hit on toxicity quickly in my body, faster than anybody else I've ever met, almost. And I just start getting sick immediately from when I get here. All of this nausea, stomach aches, brain fog, not sleeping, all of these things. I'm like, what is going on? So time goes on, and my roommate, who is also very environmentally conscious, decides to contact Denver Water to figure out if something is really going on with our water. So come to find out, we have a huge lead issue here in Denver. There are a lot of cities actually that do, as I've researched this more, and the city's fully aware of this. In fact, they're so aware of it, they have a 15-year plan on switching over the lead piping, but it's 15 years, which what lead does is essentially mess up your neurotransmitters, and it lowers IQ. So you literally are creating, and if it's in kids, it can be permanent. And so like 15 years is an entire childhood, right? Like not an acceptable time period in my point of view to do this. Well, so if you contact them, they'll give you a water filter and a test kit because they're fully aware that this is going on, but they're not making this public knowledge to anybody. You have to go to them instead of them coming to you, which is to me where the issue lies in, public health. But so we get the test kit and the water purifier, and on the kit, it tells us that 0.006 is the highest level of toxicity that is acceptable in the water with lead. So we test it, and our water, 0.2. So if you take decimals out of it so it's not confusing, 6 is the number that is the absolute highest that you can be exposed to safely. We were at 200. So my body was completely on point. Like, she knew something was off. She immediately responded and gave me an honest feedback of the situation. Like, you're being poisoned. She was really supporting me in like helping me wake up to what was really happening in my environment that my mind and my eyes and everything else didn't really see and experience. Like, my taste helped me say like something's wrong, but I didn't get it, And so since I've had pure water, I am magically doing so much better. It's incredible, So I just tell you that because sometimes we sit here and we think like, why can't I focus? And why do I just not feel like myself? And why am I feeling depressed? Or why am I feeling super anxious? And between EMFs and toxic exposures in our water, we are having all of these disruptions to our systems. Mold is another big one, that creates a completely different experience in our body and our mind and our emotions. And so often we turn in on ourselves and we think like, I'm doing something wrong. What am I not doing good enough? Like, I already eat really healthy or whatever it is, and I don't feel well. And I just want you to know that, not to say that there's not something to investigate there otherwise, but it might also be your toxic exposures and the body burden that is getting too high up there that is then creating all of these physical ailments for you and emotional ailments that literally, if you just remove the toxic burden, you can up level your health dramatically. So I just want you to know that, so that you're not unnecessarily blaming yourself for how you're feeling. We really are being exposed way too highly to toxicity, and it's having a greater effect than people want to admit or give it attention, because a lot of the times these companies will say, like, you know, especially when you go and you start investigating some more inexpensive home goods, like, I don't want you to feel bad if you have to go to IKEA because you've got, you know, $59 and that's what you have to buy some furniture. You know, I mean, I would invite you to get a little more creative on how you can get furniture, because there's a lot of ways to get it very affordably besides just going to IKEA or West Elm or these different, like, cheaper manufacturers. But I really want you to look at the materials that are in these products and the real cost of these products, because the real cost to our earth as well as our own health and wellness. Because a lot of the times these companies will sit there and say, like, well, the limit is this and we're here, so it's fine. And if we experienced everything in isolation, that would be true. But when you have a dozen or more of those items in your room and they're all off-gassing their percentages, it accumulates, and now we're well beyond the amount that our body can actually process. So all of our filtering organs, our liver and our kidney and our GI tract, like, they cannot get the toxicity out of our system fast enough for us to be well. And so that's why that bedroom space is so key, to at least give yourself those 8 or 9 hours a day where your body is fully safe, and give it a break, you know, give it a break from all of that exposure. Get your EMF covers on your routers, on your cell phones. Turn the phone on airplane mode and put it in another room. Like, each time we minimize exposure, we're helping ourselves a little bit more. So please make sure that if you are investing in products right now, my suggestion is really doing it. It's like a little bit less sexy part of the design process, but, you know, getting the filters and the protectors and making sure that your materials are natural fibers, because also in the realms of natural fibers versus synthetics, we are protecting and strengthening our aura. So our aura is part of our immune system in our energy body. So we're not all physical beings. Our physicality is a small percentage of who and what we are. We are also very non-physical. So getting connected to your non-physical self is key, and your aura is part of that. And when your aura is healthy, it can be up to 9 feet in all directions. And what it does, as it goes around you, it's like this orb, and it protects you. It's part of your protection system, and it's part of that immune system that creates a barrier and a block. And when we are wrapped in synthetics, we dampen the aura and we create more holes in it, and it allows these toxic exposures to get in. So we can build that aura with a lot of different practices, as well as food and vibration. Mantra and sound current is very helpful and healing in building the aura, building the safety net in the energy body and the energy parts of our livelihoods. So know that that is some maybe a little less expected ways on how we can really support ourselves during this time. And then let's go into the design process. I just realized we have about 10 more minutes, so I'm going to try and sort of wrap this up quickly. So, because I think the Facebook Live will just turn off after an hour, so if that happens, I can always jump back on and answer questions. but we'll see what happens. I've never done one of these before. So let's get into design. So design is the last part of the process, and we're really in this process considering reflection. We're integrating all of the information that we have from our value system, what we need to nurture ourselves, all of the self-discovery process that we've worked through, and all of the rhythmic implementations that we've created so far. So we're trying things out, we're testing things, we're iterating, we're seeing how we move and how we can shift things and use what we already have and shift composition first before we end up adding anything else into the space. And also in that preliminary process is organization. Again, a lot of these kind of beginning parts of the process are not always considered like the fun, sexy parts of the design process that people think of, but these foundational pieces allow when we get to the more fluffy, fun design parts so that they are really purposeful and really valuable, and they actually enhance our well-being instead of just look pretty. So it's really up-leveling the purpose and intention of your design so that our home ultimately becomes a living storybook of our best selves. And in doing so, it invites that memory forward into our consciousness and out to be practiced, to be lived, to be shared in our home space, so that when somebody does come to our house and we have different imagery and artwork and furnishings, each object holds a beautiful and special story of our life that we get to now share with whoever is in our space and help them understand what made us, where we come from, So it can become incredibly special. And we have all of these amazing memories that we get to connect to regularly as well, to also remind us how amazing our life is and what we're cultivating and what we already do have. So it can really get us into a place of gratitude. And so as we kind of move more into these different visual reminders and I kind of didn't really say much about organization, but I do very much like Marie Kondo style, like spark joy. I totally love her process on how to organize, put everything in the center of the room and then reorganize it, throw a lot out. The detoxing lifestyle comes in doing the detoxing of your home seasonally as well. It always feels so good to let go of all of those things, donate them, sell them, make space for your ever-evolving desires and needs to be placed in your home. But making that space first and making sure that every single object has a home in your home so that it can be placed back easily, and that you do that on a daily level so things naturally stay organized and they naturally stay clean, because you can start building those rhythms that's part of your practice. And then as far as a few products that I think would be really helpful for people right now, if they were going to buy anything. I think all of the systems and all of the ritual and all of the movement is a way that you can absolutely begin your home sanctuary right now without buying anything. And then if you are wanting to buy anything that's in your means and availability, I highly suggest bringing plants into your life, into your world, and really bringing that energy and that life into your space. It adds beauty, and if you're in like an office environment or you're in areas of your home that need focus, they will also bring greater focus and joy and creativity when plants are in the environment. That actually has been studied and shown. And so really to enhance that though, and so that it really does its job, make sure that you're picking flora and fauna that is from your local region. As much as succulents have been a design choice in Brooklyn for so many years, succulents don't grow there. and it actually ends up creating a dissonance in your own experience where you're disconnected from your environment by having those plants around. It's not bringing you into greater connection with your space because your sensory system is now confused. Like, but hold on, where am I? Like, succulents don't grow here. So we want to really work with our local plants, and also really think about how the energy of our space is separated so that we're putting things in that area that are enhancing that particular energy. If you have the ability with your space to separate it so that there's more high functioning, direct masculine action in some areas, where other areas are for intimacy, reflection, quiet, like make sure that you have that kind of separation and that you're putting objects and plants in those spaces that help balance that. So maybe in the softer spaces you have orchids and ferns and just gentle, quiet plants that have a lot of round, curvilinear lines, nothing that's too spiky or too loud. And then I would also really suggest weighted blankets, especially if you're totally by yourself and you're struggling with this lack of touch right now. Weighted blankets are so incredible for your nervous system. I use them. They make a huge difference for me, and it really helps tone down and quiet the nervous system. It'll help you sleep. Make sure that you're looking for ones that have glass beads in them. I've had a hard time finding like affordable ones that are with organic natural fibers. So that's a little bit trickier to look for, but you can look for that certification to see with off-gassing at least. And really make sure that you are getting a little bit of weight on you to just kind of tone down some of the anxiety, tone down some of the fear. The weighted blankets are really, really helpful. And I would also suggest getting a circadian alarm clock. This is an alarm clock that's done with light. You can get them for like under $40. And that's going to really help you wake up a little bit more peacefully and naturally and go to bed a little more peacefully and naturally. And really, keep things full sensory in their pleasure. The texture of your textiles and the texture of the light that comes in, and the sound and the sense, like really thinking at a full sensory level, all of the ways that you can invoke and invite pleasure into your day, into your experience, and bring a more thoughtfulness to it, and really also adding in your value system. So like maybe you really love, like you have an entranceway that needs something in it. And, so thinking about those first and last moments when you enter and exit spaces or you transition rooms, like these are special moments that we get to put something there that connects and also leaves us in remembrance of something that we really love. Thinking of the first moment you wake up and the first moment right before you go to bed, what is the first and the last thing that you see in the day? Like those are special focal moments that you get to put something of extra importance. And so, maybe your grandmother is from Ecuador and you really care about supporting women-owned business and handmade artisan products. So you decide, I'm gonna do a fiber art piece to put in this doorway, and that's the first thing that I'm gonna see when I walk into my house, and it's gonna remind me of my values. I'm gonna invest my values into a physical object where now my ethos is embodied, and I get to see that every day the moment I walk in and have that spark of remembrance of who I really am and what I care about, and that begins my relationship with my home when I walk back in. So really kind of thinking about that level of intentionality behind each product that you put into your house when you do make selections, and really remembering too that when we are supporting handmade artisan product, that we are shifting the energy in our house dramatically. Like, you've all gone into pretty places technically, but that have like a void feeling in them, like they're kind of empty. They look good, but somehow it doesn't have that magic. And a lot of the times it's because these are machine-made products, and the heart and the soul and the culture isn't embodied in the object, and you can feel that. You know that at some level, you know that. And so, we're really supporting culture when we support the handicrafts of each society. I mean, it's so beautiful to see how every culture embodies their values and what nurtures them into object, and how varied that looks throughout the world. Like, there's something so magical and pleasurable about that, and it makes traveling so much more special. And as we continue into this global economy, this is also an opportunity for us to stay really like local and supporting the diversity of culture around the world when we support our artisans, because these handicrafts are so integral to their own culture, and sustaining that is so important in my eyes. And so lastly, because I know we're really about to run out of time, so I want to just say, if you want to do this yourself, so the home creation process, you kind of get the 3-phase process now, I think. And if you were going to look at your birth chart, so this is in astrology, if you were going to look at your birth chart, you can go to astro.com to get your birth chart. You need to know your birth location, date, and time. And as long as you know that, you can find it out. And then I would look at your second house. This is your house of values, and your house of self-worth. So in this area, we can really, if we're kind of struggling to understand like what my own values really are, sometimes we get muddled in other people and society's values, and we're not really sure what's ours. So we can look into the second house, and we can see where our values lie. And then we can look at the fourth house, and we can see what nurtures us. So the fourth house is the house of home, and it's also our heritage, our lineage, our mothers, and children. And so in the fourth house, not only are we learning what we need, but that mother energy is coming up so that we can then take care of that child, that inner child's needs. So the fourth house is very special, and we can directly connect with our home world here. And you can look at Taurus and Cancer. Those are the natural houses of Taurus and Cancer. So wherever Taurus and Cancer are in your chart, you can look at, as well as their rulers, Venus and the moon. So look to see where your moon is. The moon is your emotional world and your emotional needs, and how you really see yourself. And if people know you really well, they get to know your moon. So it's your internal space, and also how you feel safe and secure. And then Venus is beauty and values, and so you can kind of touch into Venus to see where you need to get a little bit of what kind of Venus is she, what does she like. And then I would also look at your north and south node of the moon. So the north and south node are points in the chart. They're not planets, but they're very important points, and these are your path of destiny. So as we are in that soul process, if we go back to the beginning of our conversation, and we're moving from Aries around into Pisces, this process of becoming, our north and our south node is our line of destiny. And so as we come to understand what the purpose of our life is, we can also understand how those values and how your home can support you walking forward into that destiny. So those are kind of the main parts of your chart that I would look at. And that we can, if I was working with somebody or if I was working with you, then, we would look at your chart to really figure out some of those answers and to lead you through that self-discovery process at the beginning of your process. And then, let's see. Yeah, and so, so start with the birth chart and then go into the 3 phases that we talked about building rhythm, detoxifying the mind, body, spirit, and space, and then adding in objects that really embody that ethos and those needs and those systems that support your highest self to walk forward and to be practiced in your home so that you can walk out that front door and bring your gifts, bring your best self into the world, and really use your home space as the practice ground to allow that to happen. So let me just look out. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything that you would like to ask specifically for your home space? I would be happy to answer that right now if you guys want to write in the chat box. And while you guys are cultivating a few questions, I'll just throw it out there. So you can find me mostly on Instagram. That's kind of where I'm most active, and my handle is just my name at Georgia Marcantoni. And my website is also georgiamarcantoni.com. And right now I am offering all of my services from astrology to sacred home design to coaching, all by donation. I really believe that all of these things are just so key in supporting people in this particular moment. Our homes are only becoming more important and will continue to be over the coming years as we are restructuring power and we are changing the landscape of our realities. We can really anchor into our home space so that we can build a sanctuary of stability for ourselves, regardless of what's going on out there, so it can really be a space for empowerment. And if I can support you in any way, I would love to connect and really get the opportunity to do that. Thank you, Claudius. I appreciate that. And if you are in the means and ability to donate anything, my Venmo link is also just at Georgia-Marcantoni. I would greatly appreciate anything that you're able to offer, and to just really share this video with anybody who this would be supportive for. I would just love that if you could. And thank you again so much for showing up. If nobody has any other questions, I guess we'll go ahead and log off. Thank you, Lightning Society. Oh, hi, Titi. Nice to see you. My Aunt Norma's here. Awesome. Well, be well, be safe, take care of yourself, and we'll connect soon, I hope. Satnam.